right? Before you had to worry about selective editing of somebody like a politician saying something and you do selective edits. Now you have to worry about it's totally been made up.
Welcome to Entertain Me, hosted by Roberto Capodieci, where we bridge the worlds of new and old technologies, meet extraordinary individuals, revisit visions of the future, and celebrate the connections between technology and life. You're now listening to Cool Smart People.
Does not compute. Does not compute.
Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Entertain Me. We have a very interesting guest today. His name is Doug Thompson. Welcome, Doug.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And Doug has a particular job. Besides being in a large corporation, been working at Microsoft a long time, he's on sales. He has this magic ability to explain complicated technologies to people that don't understand them, or at least make it easy to understand them. Myself, I had the nightmare of people asking me, what job do you do? And it's hard even to explain why I can make money sitting all day in front of a computer. But sometimes we have this amazing magic. Besides, that has a podcast of his own as well, and is many years going on. So tell us a little bit about you, what you do, and how these things are interesting.
Sure. Thanks for the intro there. I sometimes I'm amazed I get paid for what I do because I really like it. It's a lot of fun. And you're right, I tell stories. I'm a sales engineer, pre-sales engineer, been that most of my career. Found out that was sort of my meaning in life, was to go out and do that night. I'm a storyteller from apparently way back. I went back to a high school reunion and found a tardy slip. So it's an excuse in the States. We were late to class. And this was way back before digital and before any electronic media. It was a handwritten note that said I was late for class because a soda truck flipped over on the road and spilled all the soda on the road. I think I was telling a little bit of a story, but I got excused. So, it was funny. It's sort of funny to see that back from that back in my youth. But I started out learning that I worked in very technical industries most of my career, and I started as a copier repairman, which doesn't sound that technical, but. So you'd be charging somebody back at the time. Now, keep in mind, this is 40 years ago. It's like you'd be charging them $150 for a service call, and they'd want to know what you did. And I tried to explain in the technical term what it would be, and they didn't seem very happy with it. So I kept changing the story a little bit, and I found that if I related to something they understood, that they got less mad when they had to write the check. And that's what I'm
Yeah, now it's a big trouble of technical people to get excited about technical things, right? Yeah. And it just creates a small group. But when you try to explain this excitement to the rest of the world, they look at you like you're something like a little bit dumb, but like actually strange because this world conserves a good chunk of geniuses, people with very high IQ, but with a very low capacity of really social, at least to understand the rest of the world how it works. It is true that, presenting a product that is technically complex, mostly if you solve a technically complex problem to potential clients that, we really need the capacity to enter in their shoes, for their perspective, and then come out with a nice story that from their perspective is exciting and not from the solution architect point of view.
Yeah, there was a time early in my career where early at Microsoft, were speeds and feeds. You talk to fellow nerds. You talk to the IT people, the people that did it all the day. They had the budget. They could spend it how they wanted. And, you could talk their language. That was different. And as we get to more of a software as a service, or everything's in the cloud, and you don't necessarily have to have a technical background to understand or to buy it. Now I'm talking to different people. I'm talking to marketing officers. I'm talking to people that really have and frankly, they don't care about the technology. They just want to know, does it solve their problem in the language that they use? And that's where I've sort of evolved the storytelling to that. And you're right. There are, working at Microsoft and the company I work at today, Tanium, there's a lot of people, most everybody here is probably smarter than I am. But there are some people, the really, really smart ones I found sometimes challenged to talk to somebody that's not on their level, right? It's not that they're looking down, they just lack the capability and the skills to do that. And that's why I'm here to sort of help change, is because I think it limits their success to a certain area. And you think about a founder who comes up who's passionate about this widget that he or she made, but can't explain the value to somebody else.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, in fact, one of the important learning lesson I had in being an entrepreneur in this IT world is that the client doesn't care how much it costs to make something. What he cares is what he can bring to them in terms of savings or extra income or, limiting errors, etc., etc. And you can have coded that in an afternoon or in 6 months. What's the difference for them? They don't care about that. And this make, a good point in shifting perspective also in how telling the story to the client in order to make them happy to put their money on something that can make a difference for them. And now we have AI. We have things that are so concrete and at the same time abstract that is interesting. You see, I come technically from the world of blockchain. Blockchain has been a blessing for humanity that had never been used because it's being abused for cryptocurrency scams and all those sort of things. The technology on itself is fantastic and is very difficult to explain of the reason why, So I exercise this for 50 years in telling people why blockchain is valid, and when people get it, they do very beautiful projects. AI, I think, is easier because when they see is rocket science, the funny thing is that rocket science, you can see the rocket going to the sky, so it's easy to explain the final result, making them probably not. But some IT solutions are so abstract toward a concrete final result that is more and more difficult to express the value that they have, right? And blockchain has this. AI is in the point in between because it has still this idea of magic. So with AI, you can do whatever, really everything. So, and which in a way can be similar to truth, but it's not really true. On the other side, it shows effective results. We chat with ChatGPT, so we see the effect of AI. How it makes selling AI solution, presenting integration with AI different from having sold, a system for ERP that probably can help people, organize their businesses in certain other ways.
Yeah. The challenge is you talk to two different camps. You have the Terminator camp where Arnold Schwarzenegger is going to show up naked someplace soon. The Skynet's happening in this all terminal. And then you have the other half that sort of they get it and they go in and there's maybe they don't put the guide rails and stuff on. Maybe they should. They're early adopters and doing things. And there's a small camp in the middle that sort of do it right. They're early adopters and they understand and they do it this. But so adjusting the story to each camp. One of it they're afraid it's going to take their job, and some things it probably will. It can take your job. But that's this disruption we've had throughout economies. You look at, there's nobody here that operates an elevator anymore. There used to be a job over here,
Absolutely.
Well before I grew up, but and so it evolved. So you learn to evolve, and if you're not looking at AI on how it can make me better. How it can do things like, for example, I'll use it in a couple of ways. I don't do searches anymore like on Google or Bing or whatever. I will use ChatGPT or something like that and give it instructions so that it will give me a better results in search. But then again, I still can't trust it fully. I have to validate what it's telling me because it will hallucinate on occasion. It'll make stuff up, which is sort of funny, but that's the way I use it because now it saves me all that time where I manually had to search and do all these other things that now I can set it to go do, and I can automatically have it do things too, like curate news and stuff for me too. So if I'm using it as an assistant, which is really sort of even as at Microsoft as an AI ambassador, that's what we sort of were talking about is it shouldn't be done necessarily as a replacement for anything because there's always a moral thing. You go to a country that makes widgets, and because you can automate everything, you got the small village that if everybody's employed in there, right, you could wipe out the entire village. Should you do that? So it's interesting discussions, and if you can tell stories, and more importantly, if you can listen to the story that your potential customer is telling you, they're telling you what they need, what their day-to-day pain is. Do a little bit of research through ChatGPT on what their industry is. And all that, and that's really sort of helped me out a lot in that and speeding things up. and giving me the ability to get a little bit more depth of knowledge in the time that I have to go do that. So, in the products that we sell it in, how can we take it to what it's, AI is so good at consuming vast amounts of data and returning something useful in seconds, where it would take 50 human lifetimes to sort of even get through a fraction of what that is. So if I'm using it for that, like in cybersecurity, if I can use it to sort through all the noise of things that I know aren't really a risk and highlight the things that are a risk, then now I can focus my attention in the right area.
Yeah, and in fact, I think that AI as a product either is a ChatGPT, which is a place to go for questions, pretty much. But in terms of a product for a company, we're talking about agentic AI, right? So AI that has the capacity to do actual things online. But exactly because of what you said before, we're still in the point that you hallucinate, still to the fact that I cannot trust it to, I can trust to a certain point. Personally, I will never give my bank account control to an AI, right? Because you would think, what it's going to end up doing that, probably it shouldn't happen. At the same time, you would think like people use it to organize a holiday, to plan the best trip, and even to book the restaurants or certain things. I need to, the feeling, because telling the story here comes very easy. It's beautiful in terms compared to an SAP installation for which the story is a little bit more difficult to
ERP story.
Correct, exactly. That's my point. The AI story are exciting by definition, but which is the borderline where for as much as the story is exciting, we need to remain attached to reality. I had a salesperson once was going to sell website they automatically complete themselves 20 years ago. No, it's not actually a fact. You can't sell something with a promise that is not true. Obviously, it was closing sales, and then we had a lot of troubles later to deal with clients that were quite upset because we cannot keep the promise that we made. So there is an important ethical line to walk and to stay in for as much as a client would love to hear certain things rather than not. How you deal with this when you come with product like AI that is really offering good basis for stories.
Yeah, I have, you talk to people all the time that think AI is a lot more capable and stuff than what it is incorporated in different things. And it is sort of setting the expectations. And I say, look, let's do a crawl, walk, run here, right? So as we're looking at using some AI to do automation. Okay, so I want AI to sort of watch it. Here's some steps that, again, if AI's automation is good, if you can use AI on the back end, if it's machine learning, AI automation, they all sort of blur a line. They all sort of occupy the same space, yet they do different things. Yeah. But like in, for example, like if you've ever managed a network of computers and stuff, patching is always, nobody gets into IT to patch. I've not yet found the person that answers that question. Why do they get in IT to patch? Because it's not fun. It's very tedious, very repetitive. If I can automate the steps in that, right?
Absolutely.
And then use something AI to flag it, hey, there's something didn't finish right or something didn't do this. Again, trying to filter through all the things, how many times have you sat there and pushed next, and nothing happens? Yet you had to do that because you didn't have a way to automate it. That is a great way to help, again, make yourself more useful, that I can then do higher value things, right? I can go help fight cybersecurity. I can go enable this new website that's been on the books to do for months because I couldn't do it because I was patching or fixing this or that. Right. So it's setting the proper expectation. Let's crawl first, then we can get to walking. And then once we get that, then we run, but we still need to check on it on occasion, right? We still need to have probes and stuff to make sure it hasn't totally lost its mind, or as you said. Yeah, the bad thing about it is the bad guys don't hesitate to use the latest AI that's out there to help them scale to go do something.
Absolutely.
Guys, they've got this whole, these black sites, they'll have these sites that's, hey, look, you can, here's malware as a service, and if you subscribe for a year, you get a discount. It is a big business on the back.
It is an industry on its own, in fact, sadly. Yeah, absolutely. And and also something that fascinated me thinking about, if we're talking about AI, is the fact that we have another industry that is a fantastic marriage with AI, which is robotics. robotics been there since ever. So we developed a lot of capability in make mechanical arms that do particular movement, services, etc., sensors. But everything was limited to the capability of software developers to make this arm do one thing or another, right? With the injection of AI, there is a completely different control behind it, right? And we are seeing there is plenty of humanoid robots done. Actually, AI has to adapt to the human world. So as a robot is a humanoid, as a application speaks English or other languages. In the moment that humans are no more a bottleneck, probably AI is going to speak another language to another AI directly to close things. Somebody actually made it up, even an audio language is called Cyber. I don't remember the name. It was pretty fun. Can download the application and play with the cell phone and make two AI talk to each other. It's fun. And robots are actually one item that Elon Musk and many other things, there will be more humanoid robots in the world than humans in a few years. What's your thinking is how is the product? Because movies so far only shows us a bad ending when we have too many robots around. There is no one movie that came out with this amazing ending where the world is a better place thanks to robots. So I wonder if this is going to make it a difficult step in sales or not, because at the end of the day.
I think, again, getting back to sort of the widget factory and stuff on that, I think that it will be a detriment to low-skilled workers, people that currently, that they put things together and do that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I understand the process of putting something together, assembling something or what the robot does, but I learn how to control it, now I've added value and go do these things. So I think, you need some type of AI and some type of this stuff in every field that you're in. Again, not necessarily to replace anything, but how do I use it best to accomplish these things? Now, I was watching video of this first robot soccer game. I saw it was just like in the last few days they had it. But it didn't look so good for the robots there. They were falling down.
But this still was old. It's not recent. This was like a few years ago.
So they're not quite ready yet to go, be the next Pele or do something like that. But yeah, the future is out of the bag. We can't stop it. You can't regulate it. How do we best sort of control the direction of what it does? And only through educating people. And again, this is where storytelling comes in. Because, like, if I'm a legislator or something, I've been worked with some legislators where I've had to go and explain technology to them. They're very smart people. They're lawyers or again, but they don't understand the tech. So how do I explain at a high level, a simple level, to them what this could do and what the ramifications should be and the questions they should ask? Again, I don't want to think for anybody, but I do want to arm them with the questions and stuff.
That's correct.
That would Right. And hopefully whoever they're asking these of would be able to answer it in a way. And I said, look, don't hesitate to push back. Say, explain this to me like I'm a 5-year-old, right? Because that's the challenge. And then my job on the other side is to help these people that have to explain it as a 5-year-old, right? Give them here's the tools. Here's how to think about it. You're talking to your child. As you mentioned earlier, how do I explain what I do to my child? And you find a way to do it eventually, or your child is, that's the thing to have. And again, we don't teach that anywhere, but it's a very important thing to have, especially you called it your translator or interpreter, I think is what you used earlier on that. And that's very much what we do. We interpret things that we see, very complex things, and depending on who we talk to, we'll try to use their language and explain it to them in a way that they can do that.
Absolutely. And it's true. Yeah, I remember funny things when websites were a novelty. In Italy, the government made a law that if you publish a website, you need to print every page and send it to the National Library, And every time you change, you need to print them again and send them. Which obviously
kill some trees.
Somebody went there to explain to them, no, so it doesn't work like that. But yes, sometimes it's true. I mean, not to blame people that never heard about something, they should not really legislate about it immediately, but at least get consulted in order to understand what they're talking about. Yeah, it is for sure. It is a world that changes constantly, and technology has this acceleration in changes that is incredible. And we need to adapt to it. And as humans, we're very fast to adapt to things, actually, I have to say. regulators and a large government, large company usually are slower to adapt to fast changes. It is also true there is a fact where some developing countries that never use the technology are more in advantage because they are not replacing, but they are filling an empty space. So sometimes you find super advanced things like I live in Indonesia, which is a country of sort. And when I first started here, I was surprised how some stuff in the financial world were more advanced compared to Italy, Europe, where I'm from. And it's just because the regulation there are attached to the past. They don't speed up. Here. There is no regulation. So it's really a gray area where you can deploy things and then probably they're going to get regulated later. So it is interesting.
It's interesting you mentioned that. About 20 years ago, maybe 15 years ago when I was at Microsoft, I wrote a white paper, and this was about sort of using it like technology. And I made that example of that, go to a developing country that's just now picking up technology and stuff. They move faster because they don't have all these things that used to, as you said, used to apply to an analog or manual process. Because changing those things, especially as the government gets bigger and bigger, gets harder and harder. And, the privacy laws we have in place were never really thought about AI and all this ability to collect data and stuff from that. But then you have lobbyists and stuff. Again, everything just slows it down in a more mature government where if they're just starting up, again, I think sometimes they do have an advantage because they're not bound by the past, as you said.
Well, very short flight is 2 hours flight from here. There is Singapore, which is one of the most technological countries in the world, right? I go to open a bank account. The lady has this PDF in her screen, and rather than filling it online, she's printing it out, filling it by hand, and send it through the fax machine. That many people may not know what it is, but it's this box where you put a piece of paper and a copy appears remotely. And these people it's because for privacy, data entry are done in chunk of documents, so they don't data enter full document a single person. It's funny enough, because my family name is Capodieci and my mail is @capodieci.com, the data entry people mistaken the A of the lady for a number 2. So my email address was a C number 2 Capodieci.com. I called the bank, I cannot activate my bank account. They say, you need to download this form, fill it in, 7 pages of form, send it and wait, And this shows regularly. What I did, I registered the domain name c2capodieci.com and my website.
See, sad when that's an easier way to do it. Fine, okay, I'll do it this way.
Why I will wait for that? But just sometimes the bank look bad, but it's actually not their fault. It's the regulator that imposed this procedure to the bank. And just to show exactly country like Indonesia, Vietnam, Laos, all this Southeast Asia or even a little bit northern is a fantastic place to deploy new technologies because it's really white paper to write on. So that's a very good point. Europe, for example, with the extra protection for consumer, etc., Italy has been the first country to forbid ChatGPT. It wasn't accessible from the people in Italy. Then they made it, but with strong limitation. He made the country become the last. Europe is now innovating. We have Mistral in France that does some good AI, but they are the only things, and they fight. It's like swimming against the current of the river to achieve some result. In your view, given this aspect, how fast we are going to integrate AI in pretty much all the processes? I mean, many cell phones are made already with the chip for the AI, but not yet model runnings in it because they are not yet ready, small enough, or some have, some not. Computers, I'm running local models constantly to do things, which is very interesting. But my computer cost me $10,000, which is another point. Probably in a couple of years, the same computer is going to cost $2,000. I saw NVIDIA came out with beautiful super computers that cost $3,000 that can run billions of tokens. What do you think is going to be the extension impact of AI in the lives of people at home and at work? Where is not going to get there, when it's going to get there later, where it's going to get there first?
It's sort of interesting because I think it's somewhat generational. You look at people, the baby boomers or the millennials and things like that were born before technology. We had to sort of learn technology on the fly. I was the remote control on the TV we had at the house. My dad would maybe get up and go change the channel. I mean, so That's where I came from. But I've been curious. I've been a nerd, and so I appreciate that. But there's a lot of people in my generation just soon leave it alone. I had somebody on my podcast the other day, worked for Amazon, was working in the Alexa division. And he told a story of when they went to like these elderly care centers, nursing homes, things like that. AI, they started using Alexa in there because they found out like when you're there, unfortunately, like in memory care, they'll ask what time is lunch every day for like 4 or 5 times a day. So if you're asking a human that, just think about how much of that time and how stressful that is, where they could ask Alexa what time it is, and this, or learn things about the individual that is in the room that would help them. That actually makes their life better, from that standpoint. So I hadn't thought of that use case, but it's perfect for that, for something that is repetitive. So then the staff can do things like actually go talk to them like you and care for them, instead of being the dial up the weather thing. I used to have the number where you dial up hey, here's the weather for the things. It's going to vary by age group and industry. As we get the younger kids, which were born to technology, as unfortunately at my age, a 40-year-old's a kid. Because I have a 40-year-old daughter, but it's
4. You said 4 years old.
I have a 40-year-old daughter.
So 4 years.
Yeah, no, I have 4. I would really have lost my hair if I had to go. I've got a granddaughter.
I have a 4 years old daughter. I have a 32 years old son, a 33 actually, and a 4 years old daughter.
Yeah, it's different. It's fun watching. Being a grandparent is pretty cool. But I watch them. They expect technology to engage with it, because I'll watch the kid, and you watch them. Their screen, even if it's not a touch screen, got fingerprints all over it, because they expect it to do something. So it'll be interesting to see when they get in control of things. I think the speed will increase, because right now you've got, again, people, the generational didn't grow up with it, still making laws and stuff, which are, again, the countries that don't have those things could get an advantage. Although, again, we have the money to build the data centers and the infrastructure. So powering an AI data center is not a trivial process. So getting infrastructure in some of these countries you're talking about is hard, right? Because now I have to build up the infrastructure to support the technology. So I think it will accelerate at a certain point at a much more vertical level than it is now, but it's still going to be a pretty aggressive growth, I think, because of just simply what it can do. And as companies look at these things, I looked at Microsoft, I looked at some of these other companies are laying off a lot of the carbon-based life forms when they're really focusing on AI. It's not that those people weren't valuable, but they were sort of changing the business. There's some things we can do with some AI and stuff will help. So it's always very interesting. And again, I picked that name, but Amazon, you look at all the companies that are sort of looking at that. And
in fact, specifically for Siri, I wonder, it seems amazing when it first came out. Now when you use ChatGPT daily and then you go to Siri and ask, which is the weather in this town, and says, okay, I'm playing the song or whatever, but says, you didn't understand me first. Okay, I have an Italian accent, I get it. But why... And you wonder why those places will be the first place where you go and inject the power of AI for dealing with, voice recognition and also analysis for answer. And it didn't happen yet. So my Alexa and is still at the same level that it was 5 years ago.
I think the challenge there is like, especially with language, there's a lot of regional dialect that if you're a human, you can sort of make that translation. You understand, you talk to somebody from like south of France or, here, right? They always call us Texans. We talk funny, but if you can pick up those nuances. There's things that the human brain does that I don't think that AI will ever be able to do. So like as good as ChatGPT is writing it sort of a basic draft of something, it's not in my voice. Again, that's the other thing of that. Don't take for granted, hell, here's my finished paper. That's what, in school, when we did education, they were restricting AI. But they said, look, they're all going to go around it. You need to teach them to use it responsibly, is to sort of help them get along. But they always need to and that's why with storytelling, always the people that I work with, don't try to tell a story like I do, because I've got my own experiences. I've got my own things on that. And I can't do that, but tell it in your voice. You can use the same sort of framework, but tell it in your voice, because if it doesn't do that, those carbon-based life forms, we still pick up on those little nuances that others don't. And like I said, you can pick up on a sort of a slight dialect change between something that the training data is too inconsistent on the it comes in, and frankly, I try not to send anything back to Siri or something if I don't have to, because I still don't know who in the government is going to use it for some nefarious reason.
Recital.
Not that I'm missing anybody, but so and there's a good thing and a bad thing about it. One, I want my privacy, but two, it also is going to limit the impact of learning language. That's a very hard thing to do, but especially if you've got a heavy dialect or something. Siri is still primarily in English. Does it in English, but it's still 80%, 90%.
I don't think the Siri is based on AI though. I think Siri is based on regular code.
The regular thing. But yeah, you're right. With AI, can it learn to pick? Now, it's creating some wonderful deep fakes and stuff out there. People doing things like, even like you translate. You've seen the one where they put a famous movie scene or something, and babies are doing it, and then they use the voice dialogue from and it's like, what? It's a good waste of time. I mean, it's kind of funny, but that shows you what's possible. So you have to sort out, did this really happen? Right? Before you had to worry about selective editing of somebody like a politician saying something and you do selective edits. Now you have to worry about it's totally been made up. And looking, again, if we're not focused on validating what we're seeing, don't always trust your ears or eyes. Do a little bit more.
Yeah, we cannot believe any more pictures, videos, and audio that we see or listen.
So that's where that's about the only time I go back and use a traditional search engine. Is sometimes to validate based off of the other thing, links and stuff that I see. Did this really happen?
Right.
And then I'm still at the control of whoever at the search engine I'm using. Do they want to hide things or not? I mean, it's giving ever more challenging. Can I truly believe it and triangulate this stuff? And so I still talk to my humans.
At the end of the day, but it's all extra. I mean, when I was a kid, either you have an encyclopedia at home to go, turn the pages, or you have an uncle that knows it all, but pretty much the knowledge was limited to the people you can reach or the item you can read now. In fact, education to me should be changed completely. Right, maybe before AI, it would make sense that school only teach how to learn because knowledge is online. You don't need a teacher to teach you one subject. You just go and you find all the best way. Now with AI, even more, you can customize single kid by single kid to the correct IQ and speed of the kid, lessons to learn. And I saw one school start doing this. There are classes where kids go there and each kid has his own customized, personalized lesson.
Yeah. I think, I've seen places where teachers basically become a curator of content and stuff for them. Which again, so you can use AI to do certain things. Here's this automation piece, right? Because in the AI, it can adjust a little bit as it goes up, but basically it needs to be told, here's my paths, right? Where if I have the teacher in there, it can do a little bit more nuanced things and watch the students. But again, instead of teaching, hey, memorize this, why do I got to memorize it when everybody carries something in there? Like I said, teach me how to think. Teach me how to use AI in a way that makes me better, where I can now do the stuff that carbon-based life forms are best at doing. Is that nuanced area there that can't be coded, right? It's a creative piece of that. It's the discussion we have, and we get ideas from each other listening to that, hey, it takes off on a different track and it's got a different flavor and it spurs different memories and stuff that we have. So teach them that, and that's what we really need. And that's when I go talk to schools and stuff, I try to encourage.
Yeah, this I think is another key.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm telling my kids, because university degree is important. If you don't have the piece of paper, they don't hire. And so I'm not really sure. Personally, I dropped out from kindergarten. So really school is not something that made my extra. And I had an amazing career in my life. You leave a track record of successes, you have a track record of experiences that can be proven and that worth more than, a title that obviously is also an extra. I actually was sneaking in the university to follow lessons without being actually registered at the university. In Italy, being subsidized by the government, I didn't steal money from anybody doing that, but because I wanted to learn specific things. But today for a kid, what is important is really to create a reputation. I don't think there is much else, specialize yourself in something, leave a track record of what you've been doing, even if it's silly things, a small article or something shared on a website. because the resources to learn and the resources to deploy, the resources to do are all there and are plenty.
Yeah.
Society is going to change in these terms, I think.
Yeah, through a lot of websites, I can go get like the smartest person at MIT and go sit in a class remotely, right? So I don't have to enroll in Harvard or MIT to go do these things. I can get and curate my own learning. But you're right. I mean, for example, like developers, most of them have a GitHub repository of work that they've done. So a future employee can look at it. It's all here, right? And I can go back and do that, which I think is great. It's a proof of work, right? And then you ideally work in some blockchain to say that it was me that did that. It wasn't somebody else that came in and did that, right? Here's the smart contracts and stuff. You talked about that. I mean, again, that's unfortunate that's got overlooked by the latest meme coin or what have you. But, you know, there's ways that you can do that. And when I go talk to kids that are they're graduate students or something in some of these programs, I'll say, there's no gatekeeper to getting your stuff, your story out there and publishing things. Publish thought leaders, engaging with people across the world. And they don't do that often enough. And I said, look, if you do that, you want to be sort of, you know, when I think about, blockchain, you know, I would think about Roberto, right? Because I know you and I know some things and there's a body of work out there. So, you know, if I'm going to have a blockchain question, hey, I'm going to go ask Roberto because he's got this body of work. And that's what I try to do from storytelling. So get out there and get engaged. Put it out there. You know, you used to have these gates of magazine publishers and these other things where you could do a blog. But get out, engage on LinkedIn. Get out there and do this because then you want to be the person in an interview loop that they remember. Not necessarily you didn't have the best resume and stuff on that, but they remember talking to me, right? Because I told stories and I put things in their mind that they would remember me from. Develop those skills, right? You've got the technical things, you got these other things. Now, again, what's your unique secret sauce that they should come and why should they remember you? And why should you be the go-to person for whatever?
Absolutely. And this is a fantastic tip. And I think is a fantastic point to even close this conversation, which is fantastic. And I want to have one more with you in the future if you want.
Yeah.
Or I can be a guest in your podcast. We can do this as well. But it's absolutely true. Future is going to be different. All this, mostly AI is going to make a difference. And kids should actually invest in being remembered for telling the right stories to be remembered for the right thing, as you suggest.
And kids, we're born with the talent to tell and listen to stories. Somewhere over time, they beat, either society or these applications and stuff beat it out of us. Because I listen to my 5-year-old granddaughter tell stories, and she tells them without fear. And I'm like, where did you even think of that? Because we haven't taught her limitations and these other things that as we grow up, well, you can't do this, you can't do that.
Consider even more.
Back, right?
When I was a kid, there were 3 channels in the television, and the source of information I can get is limited to the little I can watch there and my parents. Now, kids with YouTube, with all the sources, they have a constant flow of, filtered and quality in a certain way, a kind of input. And it's interesting how they come out now surprising you with things that you say, where did you learn this? It is...
Use it. Don't be entertained. Use it for research and to make yourself smarter. That's what I always
exactly doing.
Yeah, there's a lot of entertainment out there, and too many of the kids now look to be entertained rather than encouraged. And
it's the same thing like video games. I was born in a moment where video games were quite ugly and bad, and it pushed me to code them. Now, today, for a kid, it's going to be quite hard to think I'm going to do another GTA and other, things because those are multi-million-dollar investment with the things that are huge. So on a certain point, lucky to be born in a certain moment, historically, in technology, but also those that are 5 years old today, I think they're very much blessed for what is going to be the future if things goes well in terms of...
maybe they can not work as hard, not spend as much time at work, right? They put some automation stuff in place where they have more leisure time to do things than what we did as we were sort of, the early adopters and those things that are creating the technology. We didn't spend, it wasn't unusual to not see your family a lot if you were coding and doing these other things where
this is
done. But it's a risk of losing family. And I really, the importance of use AI and stuff to help give you that family time back. Because you don't have work-life balance, you have life. And you have to learn to balance it yourself.
Yeah, that's very true. So that's like the message for the adults of tomorrow, probably, giving them, hopefully, I wonder there will be many different ramification of addiction to AI. I see many adults that are probably lonely and stuff. They end up having AI like the best friend, the only confident, and then become very risky. I always say it is a mean, it's not an end. You need to do something. It's a fantastic tool. Yeah, because if you become an end, it's very, very dangerous. Like certain people that says that the autocorrect function make people more illiterate. Honestly, to me, it's the opposite, because if I get autocorrected, it's annoying. So I make sure that it doesn't happen again, and it teach me new spelling of words, that in language maybe that I'm not native.
Yeah, my fifth grade English teacher would be very, very disappointed at my spelling skills today because I got lazy.
Fantastic. Okay, so is there any particular message you want to share with everybody? I'm going to put the link to your podcast in the below, but there is anything particular you want to say?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, most active on LinkedIn. I'm, do some stuff. I'm the Doug Thompson just about everywhere because anybody could be a Doug Thompson. I wanted to be the Doug Thompson, something aspirational. But if reach out to me on LinkedIn, connect with me. So, let me know you heard me on the podcast. I am working on my first. So I've got co-written three books as the bestsellers. I'm trying to write my own now. And it's about sort of the technical part of storytelling. So there's a lot of system engineer books. There's a lot of these other things. So I'm really trying to say, okay, here's the art form in the middle of how to craft stories and use them that sort of round out your skills. And this is what separates the best from the average. And that's what I'm working on doing. So look for that. And then, if I'm sitting there writing so hard because I'm a little bit ADD. I'm like, scoring. Well, yeah, but I can't. It's not my voice, so I got a very distinct voice. But there will be some research and stuff done for it. But that's the best reach. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Let me know you heard me on Roberto's podcast, and happy to have you. And again, thanks for having me.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
You've been listening to Entertain Me, hosted by Roberto Capodieci. If you're not subscribed, you better smash that subscribe button now, or else your favorite gadgets might go on strike.